Good morning, everybody. Where are those CFT signs? Hey, CFT members in the house. As you can see, there it is, right here. All are welcome and safe here. Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Jeff Freitas. I'm the president of CFT, and welcome to our U.S. Candidate Forum. I dropped off a word there. U.S. Senate Candidate Forum. We're not taking over the whole U.S. So CFT members online, there are hundreds of you online. Thank you for joining us. There are hundreds in this room. Unfortunately, for the camera angle, you only see a portion of us. We are strong and proud. We're a union of educators and classified professionals throughout the state. This is a hybrid or virtual attendance. We have 3 outstanding candidates for the U.S. Senate in California, Representatives Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, and Barbara Lee, who we'll be hearing from today. We have CFT members here from their districts, as well as across the state, all the way to the north, to all the way to the south part of the state. Today is an opportunity for us to hear from these candidates about the very important issues that we care about. We want to hear them talk about our values, our issues. We're going to ask questions, some critical questions about public education, about education in general, labor issues, and show them how invested our members, how we are all invested in the process of choosing the next U.S. Senate to represent our great state. As I talk about the candidates today, I'm going to list them in the order that they will be appearing here with us. We will meet with Congressman Schiff first, then Congresswoman Porter, and finally Congresswoman Lee. The order was determined not by coin flip, it's not football, but based upon the candidate's schedule and availability. And I just wanted to make sure that clear from the outset how they were selected for this order. I also want to make clear that the candidates are joining us via Zoom. All 3 candidates today will be on Zoom, equal access to you as well as the people in the room. We initially had hoped to have the state council in LA. In solidarity, we canceled that, or that attended location, after we had informed them we would be in LA, and moved it here to San Jose. So they had scheduled events in LA, thinking that they needed to be in LA with us, and then we moved on them. So the best alternative was to have them all on Zoom. So we kept it equal. They're all on Zoom, and we are supporting the Unite Here workers down in LA and throughout. And if you're near a strike line, please join any of the many strike lines in LA or throughout the state. Unite Here, UAW. I think Kaiser just finished. I'm looking around. They did settle. Congratulations to them. So before we begin about these candidates, I wanted to recognize the passing of Senator Dianne Feinstein. We have posted this, but I just wanted to state this because this is her seat that was vacant. She was a tireless advocate for equity and fairness. She will always be remembered for her leadership in advocating for the LGBTQ+ community, for women and children, for common sense gun reforms, and for protecting the environment. Her legacy will be seen as breaking through glass ceilings in a career of many firsts, blazing the trail for the countless leaders who have followed her in her footsteps. Also, we want to note that Governor Newsom recently appointed her replacement, Senator Feinstein's replacement, LaFonza Butler. We did reach out to Senator Butler's team, but at present, she has not declared herself as a candidate for the seat and will not be joining us today. If and when that occurs, we will make sure that Senator Butler has an opportunity to address us in some form if she has that interest or thought to run for office. We have been planning this for many months, didn't know the recent changes that would be occurring. So regarding those who will be meeting with us this morning, it's no secret that all of these candidates have impressive, progressive credentials. And we have a history as a union of endorsing all three in their current seats. In addition to their solid voting records and the many times they have stood up for what is right, all three have stood with educators as they fight for equity and justice for themselves and for their students. Congressman Schiff recently joined our faculty local at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena to stand with them in their act to get a first contract against their employer. I should say with their employer, but right now it's against their employer. Congressman Porter has regularly met with CFT locals and members in her district and recently stood with our adjunct faculty United Local at North Orange Coast Community College to support their actions in their contract negotiations and their efforts to get part-time health care at their college, which they have succeeded. And Congresswoman Lee joined Oakland teachers on the strike line. Yes, on the strike line, when they fought for more services for their community schools, for their Oakland families. In many ways, we have an embarrassment of riches with these three candidates. And I know from talking to other AFT state Fed presidents, we are rich in having progressive candidates. Where in some states, they are hard pressed to ever even find one. And we won't mention some of those in West Virginia that are not good for what we're trying to achieve, the fairness and the public education that we want. But we have three here. We would be lucky to have any one of them represent us in the US Senate, and we are honored to have all three of them joining us today to talk with us about our issues that matter, our vision in CFT. For those of you in the room, you have at your table a QR code that will take you to a feedback form to fill out during and after the interviews. For those of you online, we will continuously put in the chat a link to a feedback form. We ask, you can open it now, you can look at it now. Please don't fill it out until after each of the interviews. There is a section for each candidate, and we're hoping that your feedback is based upon their responses after we ask those questions. Depending on their time, we have about 30 minutes for each candidate. We may have a little airtime between that you may fill that out. We ask that you fill it out during or after the complete form. So that's for everybody online as well as in the room. I encourage you to listen closely and take notes as your responses are going to incredibly impress or be valuable to us at CFT, the CFT leadership, because at the end, I'm hoping we can share reactions and have a discussion about what you heard from the candidates. Please share your honest thoughts on these candidates on the feedback form, as this is one of the factors CFT will use as we consider whether or not to endorse, and if so, who that endorsed candidate would be for this US Senate race. Again, for those online, you will see something in the chat to have that link. I'm making sure that that's occurring. It is. And now, speaking of endorsement, I just want to make clear for those online, as well as those in the room, we will not be taking an endorsement vote today. Today's forum is one step in the process to include everybody that is involved. And the feedback today is as important as the poll that we have done with our members in the past, as well as working with other labor unions, as well as the Labor Fed and our national AFT. We have a meeting of the Executive Council on November 3rd, where we will have a consideration of this endorsement, again, with this feedback today and moving forward. So with just a few minutes left, I sped through that. It seemed like I sped through that. Do we know if the candidate is in the green room? Okay. With that, want to make sure, I know the people in the room, we have signs. Anytime you see the candidate come on stage, we want to make sure we shake those signs for our members as well as the candidate on the screen. And the timing of the speeches and having people ready to go is a little difficult. So the order again today will be Congressman Adam Schiff, Congresswoman Katie Porter, and Congresswoman Barbara Lee. During each of those questions, we have a series of questions. Many of them are going to be the same. We also have 3 people, one from each of their districts, to ask a question from their area. Those will be different. We also have in our back pocket a few extra questions in case we have a little extra time like this, whether they will be focused on labor and some of our other labor issues. In the room, are there any questions about this process? I know we don't have, I can't get feedback. Seeing no hands. On the screen, do we have anybody in the green room yet? No. They are punctual. Should I do my president's report over again? I think that was a no. As we just to remind those people that are online, we talked about it in the room, the vision statement for CFT, our strategic vision is united for justice, united for education. You will see these questions are based upon that broad group. As you know, we represent education workers from early childhood through the university system, in the public sector, as well as the private sector, in the classroom and out of the classroom. If you think of an education worker, we probably represent that position. The only area we don't represent is the CSU in the state of California. With that, we represent a broad group. We're going to be focusing on education, but also talking about each one of those. We're going to be focusing on United for Justice. We are focused on making sure that our workers, our members are safe and can do what they need to do their job, to provide that education, as well as the students. So again, I'm going to ask, so there's someone over here that has a sign that is white. Our focus are all are welcome and safe here. That is a message. These are signs. If you're a local leader, if you're a local member, these are signs that we are ordering. Oh, they're all over the place. I love that. We will order for anybody that wants to put this up in their classroom to make sure that students feel welcome and safe throughout the state as we are fighting some of these issues, which we will address today. Again, we are united for justice and united for education. Hopefully many of you have seen me. Thank you. It's a great audience. Hopefully many of you have seen me on a back to school tour of the last 3 years. Again, this is the access that we have done to listen to the members on how to proceed, what our strategic vision is, and how to help and encourage and increase the value of our education here in California. Yes, we have a question in the audience.
Do you have a question about retired people and how they will react to retired people or people with disabilities?
We have a question about retirement that we hope to get to.
Thank you.
Yes. I think you all heard that. So the question is, do we have a question about retirement access as well as disability? And the question, we do have a question about retirement and hope to get to it. Hey, hey!
Hey, Jeff.
Thank you, Congressman, for joining us today. I'm going to do a short introduction of you, and then we will start into questions. And again, thank you for joining us, and love the sign right behind your shoulder. Representative Schiff was born in, and you can correct me on anything that's about you. So Representative Schiff was born in Framingham, Massachusetts, and graduated from high school in Danville in California's Bay Area. Have some locals. He attended Stanford University and Harvard Law School. He was elected to the California State Senate in 1996 while serving in the State Senate. He also taught political science courses at Glendale Community College and was a member of CFT Local 2276. Mr. Schiff was elected to the House of Representatives in 2000, where he represents Congressional District 30, which includes Glendale, Pasadena, and parts of Los Angeles. He also wrote on the AIDS life cycle. He currently serves on, that was personal. He currently serves on the House Judiciary Committee and the House Appropriations Committee, and he and his wife, Eve, have 2 children. We are honored to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we have about 30 minutes. I'm going to ask the first question. It's kind of a lob question. I want to start by asking you to tell us a bit more about yourself and why you want to serve in the U.S. Senate. Please try to limit yourself to about 4 minutes because we have a few questions. Thank you.
Jeff, thank you. It's wonderful to join you. If it's a little noise in the background, I'm at the Machinist Hall in the Antelope Valley for a Democratic Day of Action, and just stole away to have a chance to join you all. We're going to elect another good Democrat from the Antelope Valley and flip the House. But I am a unapologetic, unreservedly pro-educator, pro-worker, pro-labor Democrat running for the U.S. Senate. I'm the proud product of a public K-12 education. So is my wife, and so are our 2 children. And I strongly support educators, particularly at a time like this when educators are being put through the ringer in the culture wars that the right wing is launching. I am proud to stand beside educators on the picket lines, in the committee rooms, and out on strike, and make sure that we fight for educators. As Jeff mentioned, I'm married. My wife is named Eve. Yes, we're Adam and Eve. I was for some years a adjunct faculty member at Glendale College and a proud CFT member. I know the value of public education. I know how hard you work, and I know how deserving of respect and support you are. And it is what is driving my campaign. I'm proud to have the support of 7 statewide labor organizations who know my lifelong work of supporting working people. As a state senator, I fought to improve teacher pensions and carried the legislation that guaranteed a minimum purchasing power for teachers. I fought for up-to-date textbooks in our schools. I fought for a longer school year and more paid education days for teachers. And in Congress, I've been proud to walk the picket lines with workers with SEIU 99 when they were being paid $25,000 a year. Our nurses' aides, our bus drivers, cafeteria workers, proud to stand with CFT members at Pasadena Art Center to make sure they got the pay and benefits and respect that they've earned. Because I know you're fighting for a quality education for all Californians. I was also proud in Congress to bring millions back for education, for Head Start, for early Head Start, to have authored legislation to increase salaries and investment in early Head Start and Head Start, as well as the RAISE Act to provide up to $15,000 in tax credits for early childhood and K-12 educators. And I will always be on the side of educators. I feel in my own life that my K-12 public education gave me all the skills needed to succeed. And the challenge I think we face today is the economy is simply not working for millions of people. It's not that people aren't working. The problem today is that they are working and they're just not making enough to get by. And the challenge to our economy is tied to the challenge to our democracy. When people feel that the economy isn't working for them or their quality of life has slipped below their parents, they start to be receptive to every demagogue who comes along promising that they alone can fix things, a demagogue like Donald Trump. And so I'm laser focused on fighting to raise salaries for working families and also making sure that everyone has a good chance to succeed. And that means a good quality public education. So I'm proud to be your advocate, your champion, your partner, and will be so proud to fight for you in the U.S. Senate.
Thank you. Our next question drills down a little bit more focused on public education. What to you is the purpose of public education? And when you answer this, please think about all levels of public education from early childhood through our TK-12 system, community college, and our universities.
Public education gives everyone a chance to succeed. It gives everyone a chance to enjoy the American dream. Early childhood education in particular is absolutely critical because you can see, I think, that by age 5, the achievement gap is already established for kids that don't have opportunity to get early childhood education. So I think early childhood education, providing support for early Head Start and Head Start teachers is absolutely vital. It's why I focused on bringing millions back to California to support those programs, why I've introduced legislation to increase the pay for early childhood educators, as well as provide the infrastructure for more Head Start programs, to expand the eligibility so more families can participate, because everyone and their kids ought to have that opportunity. And what's more, if parents don't have that kind of educational opportunity for their kids, then they're not able to enter the workforce, and they can't afford quality education, early childhood education for their kids. In terms of K-12, personally, from my experience and that of our kids, it gives young people the foundation they need to succeed in society, to succeed going straight into the workplace, or to succeed by preparing them for higher education. It is the foundation. I can remember so many of my teachers, K-12, who taught me everything from calculus to Shakespeare, to biology, to physiology, to contemporary world problems. I can remember them by name, and I could tell you the incredible impact they've had on my life, and the same for our kids. So K-12 education gives folks the chance to become full, participating, successful members of society, whether they go to college or they don't. And for higher education, this gives folks also a way to pursue their dreams, to pursue their passion, to contribute even more, and having those doors of higher education open and having young people not saddled with huge debt is a top priority of mine. It's why I support the president's efforts to forgive $50,000 in student debt, but also why I think community college should be tuition free, and why I also strongly support making sure that young people aren't put in debt to begin with, and that we crack down on these abusive for-profit online schools that are doing so much to rip people off and put them in debt at the same time. But early childhood education to give people that important early start, K-12 education to prepare them for society and the workforce, and higher education to allow them to pursue their passions, to contribute to society in innumerable and different ways.
Thank you for that. Thank you. The next question. The federal government is supposed to provide 40% of funding for special education in public schools through IDEA, as you know. That promise has never been funded, and they currently only fund about 16%. What is your plan to ensure that the federal government lives up to its promise to fully fund its share of special education costs?
I want every child in California, every child in America to get a good quality education. It's why I was proud to support a mandate that special education be provided, and also proud why I was strongly in support of the federal government providing at least 40% of the funding for special education, which of course we've never done. I want every child to have the same quality education as my children, and that means providing special ed and funding it. I've been a co-sponsor of legislation to fully fund IDEA since I got to Congress, and a champion of it. I've often said over the years, the single most important thing the federal government can probably do in education is simply to fully fund IDEA. Now, some people seem to believe that we're paying too much for public education. I think that's bullshit, if you'll pardon my French. We're not investing enough in public education. And I'm sick and tired of people trying to make villains out of educators. I know how hard your work is, and I know many special educators, and I've seen them come back often bruised and bitten, and the travails they've gone through to provide a good education for our kids. They deserve our support, our wholehearted support. They deserve respect and dignity, and every child deserves a good education. But here's the thing. It's not enough to be for something. You have to be able to work with others to get it done. And, you know, I want to get this done on a bipartisan basis if we can, but if we can't, I'm prepared to do everything I can to do away with the filibuster, and make sure that we as Democrats get it done on our own. The filibuster has a lot of pernicious uses in history. It was used to disenfranchise a whole generation through Jim Crow. It's being used to disenfranchise another generation through a new generation of Jim Crow. But it also is being used to stop progress in providing a good quality public education for everyone. And I'm going to go to the Senate to fight to do away with that filibuster so we can get this done.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Dennis Phillips, a faculty member from the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, to come up to the mic and ask his question.
Good morning, Congressman. Thank you so much for being at our June 22nd rally. Your words and your presence definitely put some needed wind behind our sails during our rather bitter struggle for a fair contract. So here's my question, if I can find it. Under President Biden, the NLRB is more focused on protecting and defending union rights than it has been under previous administrations. However, there are still barriers in place to organize unions in private higher education institutions. What will you do to ensure that faculty and staff in private colleges and universities have the right to organize and join a union?
Well, it's good to see you, and I was very proud to join you on the picket lines. June 22nd, my birthday. What a better way to celebrate than fighting for working people. Look, these universities that claim poverty, that claim they can't pay educators well enough, I don't buy it. They can't afford not to pay educators, not if they want to provide a quality education. Very, very proud to stand with you. And in terms of the PRO Act, in terms of the difficulty getting NLRB to enforce the law, let me just start with this. The big reason, a big part of the reason why our economy is in such trouble has been decades in the making. And it is the product of about 50 years of concentrated effort by concentrated wealth and corporations and special interests to make it hard to form a union, to make it hard to get a contract when you do form a union, to make it hard to enforce the contract when you have one, to defund the NLRB, to defang any enforcement mechanism. This is why, compared to the 70s, we have half as many union households. This is also why, compared to the 70s, it's so much more difficult to become a part of the middle class. And I'm going to fight to give real enforcement power to the NLRB. I think the PRO Act is the single most important pro-labor legislation in my lifetime. And I'm going to go to the Senate, again, to do away with that filibuster, because that's what it's going to take. Republicans are not going to help us on this. They're too much in the pocket of big corporate interests to do away with the filibuster and pass the PRO Act, to fully fund the NLRB, to give them a strong enforcement mechanism, to make sure that you are not subject of unfair labor practices. And if you are, that you can prosecute cases against the big employers that are perpetrating them. That's my commitment, to be not just a good voice in the Senate, but Joe Biden has been the most pro-labor president in history. And when I get to the Senate, you're going to have the most pro-labor senator in history working side by side to give teeth to the NLRB and make sure that we can enforce the law.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. A couple quick questions. And you kind of already answered it, but it's on the list. Have you ever walked a picket line? And if asked, would you join us on a picket line?
I've walked the picket line many, many times. And of course, when you ask, I will be there. I'm glad we're having a hot labor summer. And I think each of these fights are important, obviously, to the members of that particular union and their struggle, but it's important to all workers. It is the same struggle. And it is a struggle that's going to continue with AI and with changes in the workplace. The question is, are we going to leave working families behind? And my answer is, hell no, hell no. And I will be out there with you on the picket line. I will be with you in the committee. I will with you on the body of the Senate. I will be with you in the streets. I feel like Churchill here. I'll be with you on the landing places and on the beaches. I will be with you in this fight for working people, for respect, for pay, for dignity. And let me just make this one last comment. On Labor Day, I was with a group of longshoremen in Wilmington. One was wearing a retiree shirt. I asked him how he was doing. That's a very physical job. And he said, because of this union, I've got good health. Because of this union, I've got a good retirement. My wife and I retired in dignity. This union did that for me. When I was a longshoreman, I didn't go to the doctor unless I was bleeding. Now as a retiree, I go all the damn time. And this union gave me good health care. I want good health care and a good retirement for all workers. And that's what I'm going to fight for in the Senate.
So my next question, probably a short answer. If the kind of retirement, if the House actually had a speaker, let's just assume we eventually get one. No fault of yours. Well, maybe some help on your assistance. But would you vote now or in the Senate to repeal the WEP GPO? The WEP
Absolutely.
Windfall Elimination Protecting Act and the government offset.
Absolutely. You know, first of all, in terms of the speakership was pretty vacant even when Kevin McCarthy was sitting in it. But absolutely. And in fact, I have ever since I got to Congress, instead of penalizing educators, trying to deduct from their retirement income when they've earned it, we should be making sure they can enjoy a secure retirement. And absolutely, I always have fought for it and I always will.
You are always concise on your answers. What my last question is do you have any closing remarks? Anything about your campaign or what you want us to know?
Thank you. I'm very proud of the campaign we're running. We're running a grassroots campaign. I think we're building the largest grassroots campaign for Senate in California history. Our average contribution is only $32. We're not taking corporate PAC contributions. And I'm so proud to have the support of 7 statewide labor unions representing almost 700,000 California workers who know my record ever since I was a state legislator and before of fighting for working families. I am proud to be your advocate and your champion. When retired teachers needed a champion in the state legislature to improve their pensions, I wrote the bill. When students needed up-to-date textbooks in schools, I wrote the bill. I was proud to fight for nursing staff ratios as a legislator. When Head Start in my district said they needed more resources, I was proud to fight to bring millions home. I'm proud to fight for Head Start and early Head Start educators all over the country. As a former adjunct faculty member, I was proud, so proud to be a member of CFT. And I will be proud to fight for you in the US Senate. My record of fighting and delivering results for Californians is what's earned me the support of Nancy Pelosi and 60% of the California House Democrats, as well as almost 250 state and local electeds up and down the state of California. And I would be very proud to have your support as well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Senate candidate. Hey. Thank you for joining us. I know we're running a little early, so thank you for hopping on, and this is fabulous. We are now joined by Congresswoman Katie Porter. Welcome, Congresswoman. I'm going to do a short, brief about you. Correct me if I say anything wrong, obviously, and then we'll get into the questions. We have about 30 minutes, a little more than 30 minutes since you're here early. So Congresswoman Porter was born and raised in Southern Iowa. She attended Yale University and Harvard Law School. She'll have to talk to her own organizations on how that happened. Yale and Harvard don't get along, everybody else. She spent nearly 2 decades as a consumer advocate, taking on special interests in fighting for working families. She taught bankruptcy law at the University of California, Irvine School of Law. In 2018, she ran for what is now the 47th Congressional District, representing Orange County cities of Irvine, Huntington Beach, Costa Mesa, and Newport. Members in the House here. When she was elected, she became the first Democrat to represent that district since its creation in 1953. She currently serves on the House Committee on Natural Resources and the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. She is a single mom of 3 kids. And we are honored to have you here with us today. So we have a few questions, about 30 minutes. The first one is just kind of allow you to introduce yourself. So I want to start by asking you to tell us more about yourself and why you want to serve in the U.S. Senate.
Thank you so much. I want to start by saying 2 things. One, of course, I was early because educators and education support professionals know that if you're not on time, neither are our students. And that is a lesson that I learned from many, many years in the classroom. Thank you not just for having me today, but for the work that you are doing in our communities. I know this is a challenging time. I know it has been challenging, and I know we were all anxious about whether or not it's going to get better and what the pathway is to doing that. People often ask me how I manage to represent California in Washington while I'm a single mom of 3 school-age kids. And the answer is that I don't do it alone. I could not do my job without the educators and education support professionals, everybody from the bus driver who texts me if my daughter doesn't show up, to the high school teacher who knows that my son forged that permission slip because Kevin McCarthy kept me trapped in Washington and looks the other way. Educators and education support professionals make it possible for me, like so many Californians, to be able to earn enough to take care of our families. They are essential partners to parents and to our employers and to our entire economy and community. So I just have tremendous respect, gratitude, and appreciation for our education workforce. I am not a career politician. As I mentioned, I spent years and years in the classroom. Whenever anyone acts like I invented the whiteboard, I just want to laugh because I spent decades standing in front of it. And you all know when somebody isn't getting the message, when somebody's trying to hide the ball, you use the whiteboard to help guide them to understanding and information. Before I taught law school at the University of California, Irvine, and before that at a number of other public universities. I was a consumer protection advocate. So I saw firsthand how greedy corporations use their outside influence in Washington to game our political system and rig the rules against us, everyday people. Frankly, I got sick and tired of it. We would pass laws and then what would happen? Corporations would continue to cheat us. So 6 years ago, I decided to run for office. It was the first time I'd ever done so. And my goal was to rewrite the rules of Washington, not just to follow them. I am the only person in this race I'm the only person in this race who has never taken a dime of corporate PAC money. That is really important to me. It is core to who I am and why I ran in the first place. I reject donations from federal lobbyists, and these long-standing decisions directly reflect the fights that I have taken on in Congress, from going toe-to-toe with powerful CEOs who aren't paying their workers enough to make ends meet, to holding government officials accountable when they are not doing their jobs. I cannot be bought to look the other way when anyone shortchanges California families. Let me give you an example. I don't take money from big insurance PACs, no corporate PAC money. So when I learned that big insurance was using a loophole in our law to deny mental health services to public sector workers, including our educators, ESPs, firefighters, and others, I had no problem immediately writing legislation to close it. I fought for that bill, and I am so proud it was recently signed into law by President Biden. Fundamentally, I am running because we need to fix Washington. The power of corporate special interests is at an all-time high, and we are living with the consequences. We see this reflected in our economy, in our society. We see it in our education system, where for-profit companies that have pushed for years, paying off politicians to get them on their side, to have more charter schools, more vouchers, more privatization, all of which weakens the core of our democracy, which is our educational system. We need to elect a leader who isn't afraid to take on greedy corporate interests that have profits rather than quality education, our students and our workers in mind. So I'm going to show you today that I am the woman for this job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So our next question, you touched a little bit about on this. What to you is the purpose of public education? And when you're answering this, be specific about all levels of public education, from early childhood through our TK-12 system, community college, and our universities.
Yep. Public education is a public good, no less than roads or bridges or other kinds of infrastructure that people are always willing to invest in. Public education makes our economy stronger for everyone and every American, regardless of if they have kids or not, regardless of if they send their kids to public schools or not, benefit from having all children able to attend quality public schools from early childhood all the way up through community colleges and universities. Quality public education for all means that every single student should have the equal opportunity to succeed and become part of a top-notch world-class workforce that can compete and win the good jobs of tomorrow. And there is no American who doesn't benefit from a strong, stable, globally competitive workforce. And because of that, there is no American that should stand in the way of making the necessary investments in education. I want to talk about why I don't want to hear Democrats talking about education spending. You just heard me talk about investments. That's what every dollar toward education is. It's an investment, because federal education funding goes to making our future workforce and future economy stronger. Let me give you some examples. Early childhood education programs are proven to set kids up for success down the road. Spending early, giving the necessary resources to help address inequality, whether it's longstanding systemic racial gaps, whether it's gaps caused by special learning needs, that investment then helps nurture the future leaders of tomorrow. And it is the only pathway this country has, I think, to fully addressing the inequality that we face. Community colleges and universities at the other end of the spectrum are not just opportunities to get our students ready for the workplace. They are also engines of our local economy. And I see that living right here in Irvine and having worked at UC Irvine. We should be investing in quality public education for all. That includes what students and educators and education professionals need inside the classroom and around the classroom. I'm talking about dedicated mental health counselors in schools to do the work of delivering that kind of health care that our students need. Free school lunches for all across the nation, meaning that California will get reimbursed for what it has done in leading the way. And investing in our education workforce. We can't have a strong education system without the people doing the work. You guys know all too well that educators and ESPs are leaving the workforce in droves. There are pay problems, there's lack of security in retirement, there are the attacks that you are facing inside and outside of the classroom because you don't feel respected and safe in school, and you don't feel that you can keep your students that way either. So we need to raise educator and ESP pay, period. We need to create secure retirement pathways for every educator, period. We need to make sure we're welcoming people into the profession and supporting them in their early years so that they can thrive.
Thank you. Thank you. The federal government is supposed to provide 40% of funding for special education in public schools through IDEA. I was looking. However, and we know your answer is going to be, however, that promise has never been fulfilled, and they currently fund 16%. What is your plan to ensure that the federal government lives up to its promise to fully fund its share of special education costs?
What a load of BS that we made this promise not just to educators and ESP professionals, but to local communities, to families, and to kids, and then we've never kept it. We must be a government that keeps our promises and delivers for kids. This is part of the reason I am so passionate about oversight. As some of you may know, I drive a minivan and my license plate is OVRSITE. Literally spells it out how important it is that we make sure when we pass a law, we don't let our politicians just take a victory lap at press conferences and walk away. We are on the ground enforcing the terms of the law. So it's not enough to just have these laws on the books. And this is the #1 example of that in the education space. Who is on the ground dealing with these shortcomings? Who is pushing Congress to do what it promised to do? Organized labor. So this is a really good example of why lawmakers need to have strong relationships with organized labor, because educators and ESPs, through their organized labor organizations, have been the real champions for our communities and kids and families in pushing to close this funding. Look, we need to deliver on our promise, and we need to reset our framework on this. It is an investment. I do not hear that we cannot afford roads and bridges. I do not want to hear that we cannot afford to help every single potential future worker achieve their best. I had an ESP back in the day, an IDEA plan, excuse me. My kids had IDEA plans. Believe it or not, it was for speech, and yet look how fast I can talk now. It made a real difference in their lives. And I would not be where I would be today if that extra educational support had not been there for me. So we need to have elect folks who will not just make this promise, but who will take on established party leaders in Washington who have not put bills on the floor, appropriations on the floor, to actually close this gap. Democrats had control of Congress, and we did not fix this problem. Republicans had control of Congress. They sure as heck can't fix this problem. They're creating new ones of their own. So I think it is really, really important that we elect people who recognize that more of the same is shortchanging generation after generation of kids. When I say I want to shake up Washington, fully funding the IDEA is a great example.
Thank you. So now I'd like to ask one of our members, Marlo Smith, from our Adjunct Faculty United local out of North Orange County Community College up the coast. It's coast, isn't it? It is. She's going to ask a question.
Yeah. Good morning, Congresswoman. It is so good seeing you again. We actually met at the San Francisco airport about 6 months ago. And that was a fortuitous meeting because you and your office helped secure our district getting part-time health care. And for that, I thank you. And here's my question. I'm an adjunct professor of English as a second language in the North Orange County Community College District. We have recently faced hostile actions from a college board trustee who has tried to ban the pride flag from our campus. It's no secret that LGBTQ students and educators are under attack across the country and in California. What would you do as a senator to stand with these communities, particularly in education settings, and protect their rights to privacy, to dignity, and to freedom from fear at school and on the job?
Thank you so much. I will stand up for freedom, and I have zero tolerance for bigotry and hatred. Every Californian, including every single student at every age, should be free to live their truth regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation, period. We are supposed to be the land of the free, and our educators and ESPs and our public schools are where people learn that value. So it is really, really important that we model that value. The commitment to freedom doesn't stop at the schoolhouse door. In fact, it is a place where that value needs to be taught and reinforced. It is on all of us to protect freedom. We need elected leaders who are willing to take responsibility and show courage to go to meetings like that, to call out bigotry and hate when we see it. That means being on the ground in our communities, doing things like I've done, like having town halls in conjunction with PTA groups and at schools, going into classrooms and confronting these difficult questions head on. Of course, I'm a champion for the Equality Act that would address some of these issues and provide protections for LGBTQ people, but it doesn't stop there. It is really, really important that we are willing to win elections up and down the ballot. I think for too long, and not in Orange County, of course, but for too long, some people in California have felt safe. We know, we see on the ground in Orange County just what is at risk, and we know that many of these attacks historically are fought out in classrooms. So one of the things you can count on from me is I know how to win tough elections in this kind of a polarized environment. I know how to talk about these issues in a way that brings people together to focus on their kids and the ability of every child to learn and thrive in the classroom, because that is something that we have as a shared value across party lines, and we need to lean into that. So my pledge to you is not only to tackle this in my time in Washington, but to tackle it every single moment that I'm in California as both a policy leader and as a political leader in the state, where I want to help elect down ballot candidates so that we can get rid of trustees like the one that you're dealing with and replace them with people who share our American values.
Woo! Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marla. A couple quick questions. Kind of a quick round, I guess. Have you ever walked a picket line? And if asked, would you join a picket line?
I have walked lots of picket lines, and my staff will tell you that it is really problematic to send me to a picket line because they cannot get me to leave. I love being part of that community, listening to people, getting to hear more about what's going on, not just in the headlines, but how these issues that they're causing them to picket are affecting their lives and what their solutions are. So I have walked many a picket line. I am sad to say that I think I will have to walk many, many more until we are able to achieve the meet the needs of every single worker in this country with regard to pay and retirement.
Thank you. Now, if the House actually gets a speaker, let's assume, okay. Would you vote now or in the Senate to repeal the WEP GPO?
Yes, I have been a supporter of this issue for a long time. Look, this is part of the reason that we are struggling to recruit educators and ESPs and public workers generally. People pay into Social Security. It is a promise. It's a compact. Those benefits belong not to the government, they belong to the workers. And so we need to repeal them and allow people to receive the benefits. Look, we need to be doing more to expand retirement benefits in this moment, not trying to shortchange people who have worked hard their whole lives. Also, as we're trying to meet the need for more and more educators and education support professionals, we need to make sure we're not penalizing people who are entering the field of education having done another career, whether it's working in the armed forces, whether it's having been in healthcare, for example. We want that diverse, strong education workforce. Then we need to make sure that we're addressing this issue and eliminating that penalty.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remarks about your campaign or anything that we haven't talked about yet?
Yes, I want to start by talking about why public money should be spent only on public schools. When we invest public money in public schools, we level the playing field. For disadvantaged communities, we take on segregation and discrimination, both of which remain deeply, deeply embedded in our society and therefore in our education system. Voucher programs that take away money from public schools and give them to private or parochial schools are wrong, full stop. We need to make sure that public dollars are going to our public schools, and that includes to educators and ESPs. We need more educators in our public life. We'd be so much better off as a country if we had more people who knew how to use a whiteboard, how to break things down for the American people, and how to engage them in the issues that we are facing. I think about my job today. I think about this job in the Senate as so similar to the work that I did as a public university professor. It is a teaching and learning job. I learn what's going on in the community. I learn from listening to folks in organized labor, from touring nonprofits, from visiting classrooms. And I take the problems that and what I'm learning here, and I take them to Washington, D.C. and fight like hell to fix them. At the same time, when things happen in Washington, for good or for bad, it is my job to turn around and be able to educate our citizens, our community, about what's happening to help them better engage in those fights. So I would be so, so proud to have your support. In order to make real change in Washington, we need to elect people who went to Washington to change it. More of the same is shortchanging our kids, and it is hurting our entire education system. You guys know how important it is to make things plain to people, to help them come along in the process. The best advice I got when I started teaching was that students are not detectives and the classroom is not a crime scene. In Congress, and when I'm campaigning, I do not hide who I am and what I want to accomplish. My constituents are not mind readers. I give it to them straight up. When Washington's hurting them, when politicians are failing them of either party, I will tell it like it is. So I would really, really be thrilled to have your support and endorsement. I plan to form an education and educators advisory committee so that I can continue to hear from educators across the state and to be working ahead of these issues, trying to meet the demands of tomorrow before we are experiencing the harms. Thank you so much for your time and support. As the only educator in this race, it would mean so much to you, for me to have you by my side.
Thank you for joining us for the almost 200 in the room and over hundreds on the line. Thank you so much.
See you in the classrooms.
So that is 2 that we have heard from. Again, in the chat, if you're online, there is a URL for the survey. We would want your input. You can now fill in both Representative Schiff and
Okay.
welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Thank you for joining us. This is CFT.
Hi, good to see you.
Great to see you. I'm going to do a little introduction and we'll get into questions. And if I missay anything on that introduction, feel free to correct me. So welcome to join us. This is the CFT. We have about 200 people in the room. We have a couple hundred people online. This is Congresswoman Representative Lee. She was born and spent her early years in El Paso, Texas. She attended San Fernando High School in Los Angeles, where she worked with the NAACP to desegregate her cheerleading squad. She attended Mills College. She attended Mills College in Oakland and was president of the Black Student Union. She received her master's degree in social work from UC Berkeley. You can do that. Got some Berkeleyites. Congresswoman Lee was elected to the state legislature in 1990 and to the House of Representatives in 98, where she still represents the East Bay cities of Oakland, Berkeley, Emeryville, and Alameda in Congressional District 12. In 2001, she was the only member of Congress to oppose the authorization of use of force following the events of September 11th. Congresswoman Lee currently serves on the House Budget Committee and the House Appropriations Committee, and thank you for joining us. So we are honored to have you here today. We have a few questions, got about 30 minutes, and I'm going to start off with a little softball one. I want to start by asking you to tell us a bit more about yourself and why you want to serve in the U.S. Senate.
Well, well, that's not a softball, and that's for sure. But thank you so much for having me with you, and also all of our candidates. A couple of things. First of all, I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, in an immigrant community. My father was in the military, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, served in Italy in the Black Battalion, 92nd Battalion, supporting the Normandy invasion. My grandfather was the first African-American letter carrier in El Paso, spoke fluent Spanish. And my mother was one of the first 12 students to integrate. Then it was Texas Western College, now the University of Texas at El Paso. But so we were really involved also with the NAACP. Fast forward to when we moved to California. We moved to California for one simple reason, and that was because California public schools were the pride of America. That's the only reason we left El Paso. Because when I went to school, of course, schools were segregated, and so I had to go to Catholic school. And so, yes, I was the first Black cheerleader. We moved to San Fernando in Pacoima, and I integrated the cheerleading team because there was criteria where girls like me couldn't be cheerleaders. And so we had to change the criteria from a selection process to an election process. So at age 15, I won that fight, and I was the first Black cheerleader at San Fernando High School. And that was my first election at 15 years old, okay? Now, and it wasn't easy for me to move forward and get my college degree because my kids had to come to class with me. They went to public schools here in Berkeley, California. Brent, Emerson, some of you may know those schools, and they were great schools, but I couldn't afford childcare. So they had to sit through me, with me through these very difficult times after a pretty bad marriage. I was on public assistance and didn't have a place to live for a while, food stamps, you know what it was. When I went, and so much of what I'm doing in this campaign, and also just as what I've been doing all of my life, has been trying to see people who have lived experiences such as myself. I fought for people who have been shut out. I continue to do that, who don't have a seat at the table. When I was in the California legislature, it really wasn't easy to get LGBTQ protections included in education legislation, especially when Governor vetoed my California school hate crimes bill twice. Final third time around, he signed it into law. Yes, it wasn't easy to be the only member of Congress to vote against the blank check to authorize the use of force in 2001. But I did that because that was the right thing to do. It hasn't been easy fighting for student debt cancellation, but I'm fighting for student debt cancellation. And so I'm ready for this next fight. I want to be in the Senate so that I can, and believe you me, 40 million people in this golden state of California, 20 million people are living one paycheck away from poverty. I have a background in mental health. I know sickness when I see it. And I know the cure, and we must eradicate poverty. We've got to exterminate corporate greed and end austerity for working families. It's a shame and disgrace that teachers and school officials and employees have to worry about paying the rent or a house note because the affordability crisis and the cost of living in California is excessive, it's unaffordable. It doesn't make any sense to be able to, with so much wealth in this state, to have so many people living one paycheck away from poverty. And so I'm not running for the powerful and the rich. I'm running to serve the people. I want you to understand that I know what it means to be a good public servant, and that's what you all are. And I look forward to your support because kids, you all are helping us secure the future. And I've been on the Appropriations Committee, the committee that funds our public schools, the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Subcommittee. And I hope that if you haven't had a chance to look at my record, because I know we don't have a lot of time, I hope you look at my record and see what I have done over the years on behalf of our young people and on behalf of our students and on behalf of the environment in which we all live and the social determinants of education, which are extremely important for a good quality education. So thank you all again very much.
Thank you. So the first question beyond introduction is, what to you is the purpose of public education? And when we're talking about specifically all levels of public education, early childhood through TK-12, community college, and the university.
Well, the purpose of education is to, first of all, make sure that every single child has the education that they deserve to match their skills and to fulfill their dreams. Education should be an opportunity to really fall in love with learning, whether it's to develop a love for literature, a love for working with your hands, a love from learning new things, whatever. It should be funded fully by the federal government, if you ask me. And so I think we have to make sure that we understand that learning should not also be allowed should be about teaching to a test. That's another important factor I think that's extremely important, but with the feds, it should be about really a right and not a privilege. And so I'll go head to head with any member of Congress when it comes to my record on education. And I'll never forget being in the California legislature when lobbyists, and I have to share this story with you because I was on the Public Safety Committee, and they brought prison budgets to me, and they brought architectural plans for 10 years out. And these were for kids who were in kindergarten. They had accepted the fact that there'd be this pipeline from school to prisons. And so I refused to go for that. They were construction jails, okay, that would be ready for inmates who were in kindergarten at that time. So no way. I asked point blank, why don't we put that money into schools? And I wouldn't vote for those budgets, just like I won't vote for the military budget instead of prisons. That's why on the Appropriations Committee, I'm fighting every single day to deliver funding to our public schools. I've delivered tens of millions of dollars to Head Start, worked directly with President Obama to provide $4 million in computer science funding for public schools. I'm the original co-sponsor of the American Teachers Act, and I wrote the Bill of Rights for students and parents. And I wrote the first state bill that required federal funding for meals for children in the summer, during the summer. That's my effort in my legislation, and even collaborated with my Senate colleagues on a bill right now that provides for comprehensive sex education in our schools that this country desperately needs. And finally, when you look at the role of universal pre-K in reducing long-term poverty, it was my efforts that led to the child tax credit in terms of finding a solution to what we can do to make sure we have universal pre-K and affordable childcare. And so California, thank goodness, is on its way to universal pre-K, but it's still conditional on federal funding. So as a senator, I want to make sure that the U.S. delivers quality, free, and inclusive preschool to all children, K through 12. Funding should not be conditioned on test scores. I mean, that's crazy. It's worsened the disparities between school districts and among states. Since school districts are funded out of local property taxes, less is invested in education of children from low income families compared to more affluent peers. In America, the quality of a child's education, it should not depend on their zip code. Finally, as it relates to college, again, vocational education, a BA, an MA, a PhD, whatever a child decides that really they want to do with their lives, we should not be in a position as a country to saddle them with student loans. We need people, teachers, healthcare providers, we need everyone to be able to start their career without being saddled with student debt. And so I, for one, believe that community college should be free. I think we need to cancel all student debt. And we need to look at how we make sure that we have teachers who have the support as it relates to colleges and community colleges that really provide for affordable housing, because we can't separate what is taking place with our students and with our educators from the affordable housing crisis. So that's what I think we need to do. And I want to get to the Senate so I can put the intersectional kind of perspective on what educators and what employees and what students need to enhance their quality of life.
Thank you so much. So the federal government is supposed to provide 40% of the funding for special education in public schools through IDEA. However, that promise has never been fulfilled, and they currently only fund about 16%. What is your plan to ensure that the federal government lives up to its promise to fully fund its share of special education costs?
Yeah, it's really an understatement to point out that the federal government has not come close, and I mean close to keeping this promise. This is a failure in our country's commitment to public education. The cost of educating students with disabilities is part of the cost of educating all students. And so thank you, CFT, for taking a support position on the dyslexia screening bill in the California State Legislature this year. Let me tell you, from childcare to pre-K education, students with into higher ed, students with disabilities should have the opportunity to be fully included and access a high quality education that prepares them for their future. First of all, I'm the only person in this race who has a degree in social work. My background, I started a community mental health center. I've worked closely with people with disabilities, and I understand firsthand that they have been overlooked and underserved by the federal government. So I want to thank our special ed aides, those classified employees here. I know what you do, and I know how important your work is in service to our California's classrooms. Let me tell you, there are children in my family, okay, currently in special ed and in the past as we speak, okay? So just know I understand this very well. And I've always been a champion for both protecting and expanding the rights of tens of millions of Americans and children with disabilities. So as senator, I'm going to put forward a very aggressive disability policy agenda to promote access, to promote autonomy, inclusion, and self-determination from all kids, for all kids. There are three categories: early childhood education. I've always, as I told you, delivered for universal pre-K, but that's going to be a top priority for me in the Senate. But I want to make sure that children with disabilities receive the support that they need and are included with their peers at an early age. But we're also going to have to make sure the Secretary of Education and Health and Human Services ensures that federally funded childcare settings include, and this is really important, include children with disabilities and do not discriminate. It's imperative that we expand federal funding for students who receive an augmentative and alternative communication device through their school. That's important. And also we need to direct new resources to DOE to support general education teachers in helping children with disabilities develop skills in general education. Also, there's a chronic, as I said, lack of funding and shortage of special ed teachers and physical and speech therapists, and the turnover is very high. And too many students are forced out of general education classroom due to inaccessible schools. So I intend in the Senate to make it mandatory for the federal government to provide at least 50% of the funding for serving students with disabilities. 50%. That's minimal. And to spend billions of dollars over the next decade. Remember, I'm on the Appropriations Committee, so a lot of what I look at are federal funding possibilities to expand career and technical education. And we can't forget technical education for students with disabilities, for good paying community employment. And finally, to address the shortage in special ed teacher recruitment, training opportunities for our classified employees and the workload, and I know what the workload is like. Now, finally, in higher ed, students with disabilities are 6% more likely to default on their student loans. 6%. We should invest in young people, not leverage their future. So we've got to make higher ed, again, tuition free and debt free, but we also need to, we've got to do that. The cost of education is in California, even though our universities and schools and community colleges are supposed to be public, tuition free, they aren't. And you may know or you may not know that as an appropriator, I have championed the TRIO and Gear Up program for increased funding each and every year. And that's been my leadership. And also programs that serve students with disabilities so that they can attend graduate college or technical college or whatever they so deserve and want to do. So thank you again. I'm really happy that CFT is on it with regard to our young people with disabilities because they deserve more. And I have, again, many personal experiences, family experiences with children who are in special ed classes. So thank you guys again for everything you do.
Thank you. So now I'd like to ask up Regina Chagoya from the Berkeley Federation of Teachers to the microphone and ask a question.
Yeah, still morning. Good morning, Congresswoman Woman Lee.
I think I just got back from DC, just landed. So.
Oh, yeah. Good morning here. Yeah. My name is Regina Chagoya. I'm a first grade teacher at Washington Elementary in Berkeley. I'm also an Emeryville resident. So yeah, I'm in your As you know, no doubt, our public schools rely on Title I funding. In Berkeley Unified School District, we use Title I funding to ensure that we have adequate staffing for English language development services. As a senator, what will you do to ensure greater equity for students with the greatest need by making sure that Title I funds are protected and increased?
Sure. Thank you very much. I said earlier, my kids went to Emerson. They went to Brent. Well, they went to Brent first, then Emerson, and then Berkeley High. So it's really a very familiar school district for me from personal experience several years ago. But let me just start by saying we got to be clear that Leave No Child Behind was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, that's where I start. It was awful. And I fought President Bush on this every single step of the way. Title I was written by President Johnson as part of his war on poverty. And that's what education should be about, a way out of the cycle of poverty. But Title I funds are severely lacking. We need to make more meaningful and material investments in public education if we want to make a difference. And included in this are addressing the racial disparities in our public school system and our language, disparities and gaps. Research shows that students of color who have at least one teacher of color by the third grade are more likely to graduate from high school and enroll in college or in a technical program. Nationwide, about 7% of public school teachers are Black. Now, when Betsy DeVos, and I don't know if you remember this, but when she was around, you know who she was. She came before my committee many times. She tried to roll back protections, civil rights protections for students of color, students with disabilities, and LGBTQ plus students. And I told her to shove it. And it was on, I don't know if you saw that, but it was a pretty angry exchange for me because it was, if you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube, and it was really pretty bad. But due, to implicit bias, sometimes our students of color, Black students, even in preschool, we don't have are nearly 4 times likely to be suspended as white students, and we need to have support services. We have to have investments in teachers and in classified employees and in public school strategies so that if young people, because class sizes are much, much, much too big, even in preschool. So if young people need extra help, that they're not suspended, but that they are provided a pathway into the type of counseling or the type of help that they need. It's crazy and outrageous that kids can be expelled or suspended in preschool. So I think we have to look at this in totality. Even students with disabilities, they're more likely to be subjected to exclusionary discipline measures. But you know what? We have to have a whole of education approach, so that when a student is pushed out of school, we have to have funding so that they don't lose instructional time. Because once they do that, they get involved with the juvenile and adult justice, criminal justice system. And so we have to end this school to prison pipeline. And so that means we have to fund more early childhood education. We have to fund more Head Start. And we have to have, and I think it's about 16 billion for Title I grants, or more now. But I think then it was 16 billion that I introduced legislation for. But we have to have a heck of a lot more. But again, with our students of color and students with disability, we have to fight for more Title I funding and for more at-risk students and schools so that they get the funding that they need, so that the penalties for schools that attempt to desegregate and to help kids, the funds are there. And so again, as a person who's on the Appropriations Committee, I'm looking at all of the funding possibilities that I could fight for in the Senate and get support for if I were one of 100.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. So 2 quick questions. Quick question 1, have you ever walked a picket line? And if asked, would you join us on a picket line?
Yeah, I've walked many picket lines, most recently in Oakland. Last week I was with the UAW in, where was I? In Orange County in Ontario. My very first picket line was in Berkeley with the ILWU. I went to jail actually with the ILWU trying to stop these ships bringing in cargo from South Africa during the anti-apartheid movement. So yes, and I ended up actually helped negotiate contracts and stepped in when there were impasses. And charter schools, vouchers, forget it. I don't support any of that. But when I was on the, I do not believe that we need those types of schools that are draining our public school system. And when I was on the conference committee in the legislature, I fought to make sure classified employees were included in all of the negotiations when Delane Easton was chair. But also I voted against every single privatization effort and vouchers that came before us in the legislature and now as well as in Congress. And so just know that picket lines, yes, but also I'm a negotiator, I'm an appropriator, and I'm a legislator.
Thank you. Second to last question, if the House actually gets a speaker, would you vote now or in the Senate to repeal the WEP GPO?
Yeah, you know what? Extremely important. When you pay, I mean, this is crazy. This offset, you're talking about the Sherrod Brown bill, right?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I'm a co-sponsor of, I think it's HR 82. And in the Senate, I would stand with my colleagues in supporting this companion legislation. Now it's I think it's 590, I think it's 597. But when you contribute to Social Security, it should be there for you when you retire. And that's it. I mean, as simple as that. And it's outrageous that this is not the policy. And so I know Senator Sanders is fighting to lift the Social Security payroll tax and expand benefits to seniors with an income of less than $20,000 a year. I would support that. But I also know that you should be eligible for Social Security. It's the bedrock of economic security in this country. And it's outrageous that anyone who has served our children in any capacity and protected our communities would be denied the full benefits that they paid into and earned. And it's unfair and it's unjust.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remarks about what we haven't talked about, or anything about your campaign that you want to share with everybody?
Well, of course, let me thank you for inviting me to be here with you. And I would love your support in my campaign. That's the first thing, because I don't think there's anyone in this campaign who's had a history of working and fighting for our public schools other than Barbara Lee, and who's had experiences with them. And I believe I'm the only one, I know I'm the only one in this campaign that went to a public University of California. You know, I didn't go to East Coast private schools. And I think that you need to know, I understand very well that we don't need two school systems. We need to invest in our public schools and in CFT members who make our schools run. Our students are too important to cut back on education. You guys know that, especially when those cuts directly affect students of color, low-income students, LGBTQ plus students, and students with disabilities. Also, we can't allow these, let me tell you, these radical right-wing fringe groups like Moms for Liberty to undermine our curriculum. You know, I'm worried to death how the DeSantos, you know, dehumanizing of people, the other, as they call people who DeSantos despises. We can't let that happen. Our kids deserve to feel safe and to have open discussions in our classroom about their history, their identity, their gender identity, their sexual identity, who they are as people. And I support, and I'm pleased that our superintendent is really pushing back on protecting our LGBTQ students. And really, he's taken a lead, and I'm proud to have his support, I want you to know, of Superintendent Tony Thurmond, because he has taken the lead nationally to stop this from happening. And so we have to be very vigilant here in California, because this is not just happening, as you know, in Florida. This is happening around the country, including in California. And the attempt to dehumanize our students is a reminder that once, and I have to go back to you know, what happens when people are dehumanized? Then they're open season for any attacks. And that's what these banning the book initiatives are all about. And so just know that the erosion of our public education, from banning the books to trying to bully kids out of who they really are, this has been going on for decades. It's not new, but we've got to end it. And California needs to lead the way. The Senate has got to lead the way also in to end racial and economic segregation in public schools and work to attain the best educational people to teach in our classroom, our classified employees. Everyone should have a chance to teach and to work in a healthy, safe environment. And so this is really a transformative moment for our children, for all of our employees who work in the schools. And I hope you know that I believe that education is a basic right. It's a basic human right. And we have to see it as such. And we have got to make sure that the federal government, when the federal, and I support ending Prop 13, first of all. And so we have to make sure, because it's such a discriminatory policy, and we need to make sure we do that. But we also have to make sure that our federal government steps up and funds Title I and all of the other federal initiatives to begin to close these gaps in education. And so I just have to thank all of you, because you're on the front lines. And I really appreciate having a chance to be with you today. But I hope that you look at my campaign. We have close to 200 endorsers, state assembly members, senators, mayors, activists. I'm asking, going to the Democratic Party. I would love to have the Democratic Party's endorsement. I'm a Democratic Party person. I'm a member of the DNC. I've always fought as a member of the drafting committee for the Democratic Party platform, a strong education, public education plank. I've always fought for that in our Democratic Party platform. And I have 6 out of the 8 constitutional officers in my campaign supporting, in the state, supporting me in this campaign effort. And so I hope that I've earned your support. I'm not asking for you to just, support me without knowing who I am and what I've done, but I hope I've worked and earned your support. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor. Our members really appreciate it. And thank you for your answers.
Okay, well, thank you. Really good to be home and be with you.
That's fabulous.
Until
Glad we
tomorrow.
could get you out.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much.